Welcome to episode 11 of the Sweet Nature podcast. Hi, it's Linz. As always, I'm joined by Margie.
Hello.
Hello. And today we're talking the best and worst cruises for first timers. And we're joined by some very special guests. But first, a little mood music.
Your face seems to suggest you didn't like that mood music either.
That's the lift to hell music. I do not like that lift music. That music
reminds me of the Trafford Centre.
Oh.
It was called Cruise Ship Nostalgia.
Cruise ship.
Obviously.
Oh.
No, we keep going.
Well, we better introduce the voice. For those that are watching the video, they will now be able to see that we're joined by Ant and Glen of Escape with Ant and Glen.
Yes.
Hi guys, welcome to the Cruise Cast.
Thank you so much for having us.
Hello.
You're very welcome. Hello. And today we're talking best and worst cruises for first timers. And you guys were actually the inspiration for this because we saw that you'd been speaking to a lady, I think it's called Carol, on one of your videos, who was her first cruise. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, she had never. Do you know what? And she lives near Southampton.
Oh my goodness!
She said I'm 5 minutes from the port, and I was like, "Are you serious? This is your first cruise?" And she was like, "Yeah." And I've always wanted to go on one, but she was in awe of the whole cruising experience. Yeah, I think I said this on the video. I said it was to absorb that energy of a first-time cruiser who was in their element was just amazing. Yeah. She was great.
Yeah, it's almost like when you've watched a show and someone else, and you've gone at it episode weekly, and then somebody else you introduce it to can just box set it. You get that that feeling that like, oh, I'm jealous of how you're going to experience this on the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember a couple of cruises ago, we had lunch at, it was like a sushi kind of lunch thing, and we were sat at a long bench. And as we sat down, I think the couple to my left were busy telling the people opposite there, and this was like a 54th cruise or something. And I must admit, a part of me died inside. I just thought, I can't listen to this for an entire lunch. But luckily, immediately opposite us, a young couple sat down and they said, this is our first cruise and the first time we're dining with kind of strangers and stuff. Yeah. It's like, and we had the most amazing conversation over lunch with them.
Yeah. And they
before
were...
we go into sort of...
You know how like you on a cruise and sometimes I said you get a bit almost numb to it because you see it so many times over.
Yeah.
But they were literally, going through they were going through the cruise compass the way we go through the Radio Times, the highlighter at Christmas.
Christmas, yeah.
And whereas we sit there and go, do you want to go to that quiz? You're like, yeah, maybe. Yeah.
You lose that bit, don't you? Once you've done it a little while, you start going through every line of that cruise compass, that pattern, going, right, we need to do that. Once you've done so many, it's like, we'll just check somewhere, and if something's happening, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Well, before we sort of carry on with this, shall we let Ant and Glen just introduce themselves a little bit?
Yes.
Tell everyone a little bit about yourselves, Harris.
Well... Age before beauty.
We're playing that game, are we? I'm Glenn, and I don't know what to say now, actually. I've been cruising for a little while, maybe 20 odd years. In fact, I'm sure you'll ask me what my first cruise was at some stage. As we're talking about first cruises, I'll keep that till a little bit later. But I work in learning and development. Not massively interesting, but it pays the bills and keeps me busy. I travel quite a bit with work, which is kind of nicer for you though, isn't it, when you have a little bit of peace and quiet?
Oh yeah, definitely. I really enjoy not having you around.
Yeah, perhaps you should go next.
I'm Ant and I'm Glenn's husband. And
we are, the moment, anyway.
Yeah, we're happily married. And I am the other half of Ant and Glen. I've been doing I started the YouTube channel about 2.5 years ago, and it started off as a channel called The Diet Diaries. And essentially what happened was during lockdown, we spent probably most of the time just watching cruise videos and watching travel content on YouTube. And I think I kind of got the bug, and I was like, I think I could do this, because I've always just loved media and editing and all of that side of things, and just creating content. And so we went to Mexico, right, to and we were going to film our first travel video. We bought all this equipment and everything, took it all out there. And as I filmed myself, I was like, I hated the way I looked. I was so big. I was like, on camera, I was like, oh my gosh, I was embarrassed. And so we decided to go on a diet. And after that, it was quite funny, because Glenn said, I can't believe you brought all this equipment and you're not going to use it. And then by the end of the holiday, I said, I'm going to start a dieting YouTube channel, and I'm going to vlog the entire journey, as almost as if to keep myself accountable.
Yeah.
And so I did that for about 6-7 months, and it was quite funny. We were watching, like people, you guys were watching Paul and Carol, and it was quite funny. In one of the episodes I said, I guess Paul and Carol don't have to deal with this obscenity word that I'm not going to repeat in case there's children in the audience. And she commented, Carol commented, and I couldn't believe that they were watching our channel, because it was completely different niches. And then after we dropped the weight, well, I dropped the weight. I'm joking. After we dropped the weight, we went on Sky Princess and did our first cruise vlog. And suddenly we went from, getting a couple of 100 views to a couple of 1,000 views, and all of us, and it was like it was meant to be. And so, yeah, we've then became Ant and Glen, and then it just became Escape with Ant and Glen, because I wanted to put a bit more travel in it. So it's less about us at home, really. And yeah, so it's just gone from, I say, strength to strength. We're still babies. We're baby YouTubers, we're still building our audience and our style, and trying to, I wouldn't say it was a crowded niche. There's quite a few people that are doing the same thing, and we're just trying to do something slightly different with our content out there.
It's just doing something that you enjoy doing, that people
I love
enjoy watching it.
I love it. In fact, I literally, right up until about half an hour before we got onto this podcast, I've been editing. And I've got a video that's about 45 minutes long, and I'm trying to cut it in half.
How far you try to cut it down to?
I'm just taking out all the bits with Glenn in.
Nice.
Well, I mean, let's move on to sort of that first cruise. Mm-hmm. You've touched on sort of your first cruise, vlogging on it, but I'm assuming that probably wasn't your first cruise.
No.
How did you decide on what your first cruise line, your first cruise ship? Because that's one of the questions we get asked most. I'm sure it is for you guys. Of how do I choose what ship's right for me? How do I choose which line's right for me? So how did you guys go about it?
Well, Glenn, you're more of an expert on this than I have, because you took me on my first cruise.
Yeah, so I'd been cruising for a while before Ant went on his first one. My first cruise, I was working for a travel company in London at the time, and we did predominantly kind of Florida holidays and things. Yeah. And the boss decided to open a cruise division. And so he brought one lady in. She was called Jill. And she was the cruise department. And she used to sit next to me, and I'd hear her on the phone with her clients talking about it. And it just sounded so alien to me that which dining sitting do you want? And like, what on earth are you talking about? So it was all very strange, but we struck up a friendship. And after a few months, she said, I've got a familiarization trip coming up, and I can take a guest. Would you like to come along? And I said, okay, yeah. And she said, you have to dress smart, because it was a dress down office, and I'm quite a casual kind of guy. So I remember it was quite a big deal for me dressing up. And it was, I don't remember the ship, but it was Holland America, and it was I think it was Harwich, in wherever that is, Essex, I think. And we went for lunch and excuse me, a tour around the ship. And all I remember thinking was how posh everything was and how sumptuous. The dinner was amazing, and they put on a show in the theatre for us and things like that. And I just thought, oh, this is really, really nice. So anyway, the following few days, Jill and I were kind of chatting about cruising, and I said, look, I loved the idea and the feel of it, but I'm not dressing up for dinner. It's not my cup of tea. I've certainly never dreamed about going on vacation with a suit or anything like that. And she said, in that case, Royal Caribbean is your line. And she booked me onto, was Navigator of the Seas. I think it was early 2000s. I think it had just started sailing.
Yeah.
And I took my mum, because you know, you do. And it was just the right fit for me at that time.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't too formal. It was a lot of fun. But I still had that kind of feeling of, you know, we can go for dinner, go to a show and stuff like that. And yeah, so I got bitten by the bug like that. And then I brought you in to the cruising world after a year or two of dating, right?
Yes, yeah. It was NCL Epic.
Oh.
She was a new ship at the time, I think. She had only been sailing less than a year, I think. It was 2012 and it was in the Haven. So I was spoiled rotten of my first cruise.
Yeah.
And do you think that sort of then set that level of expectation then going forward?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh dear.
Yes. It's quite funny because we talked about this when we were on Anthem of the Seas recently, about different, like, because we obviously cruising has changed so much even in the short time, 12 years that I've been cruising. And I think we could talk about the economics of cruising until the cows come home. I think that there's a common known issue across the board that cruising has got more expensive over the years. Yeah. For us, you know, you have to ask yourself, what are you willing to pay for this? What do you perceive as value? And there's a lot of things in that. And what I'm trying to dance around the point is that I've never stayed in a standard cabin.
Then just say it.
I don't want to come across
There's
as
no shame attached.
I don't want to come across as a snob.
I have.
Yeah.
I haven't stayed in an inside before, but I have stayed
we've
in
never stayed in an inside. We've
a
never
porthole
been
one, whatever that sea view one, or a regular balcony as well. So
yeah.
I mean, let's sort of just follow on that. So there's a lot of similarities there. Do you want to just explain what our first cruise was?
It was Navigator of the Seas.
It was Navigator. There we go.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah.
What a coincidence!
It's so.
And do you want to explain how we decided on that? You know, the big thought process and everything that we did for selecting it.
It was a bargain, and my family were already booked onto it, and you didn't want to go.
Yeah.
But it was a bargain.
And the Yorkshire in me went, okay, it's cheap.
Oh, no.
Did you have to be convinced to actually go on it?
Oh, massively. I used to get seasick going across the ferry on Mersey. So the thought of spending 4, 5, 6, 7 days, however long, on a cruise ship was horrendous. Plus, I had the preconceived ideas, much like you guys, that I don't like getting dressed up in my day-to-day work. I'm sort of dressed down a lot. So the thought of going where I actually get dressed up and what your preconceived ideas of a cruise are, I had all them. So the seasickness, having to get dressed up, it was just like not appealing. But because your family were going on it, and we genuinely did get a last minute thing. It was like about 5-6 week out.
Yeah, and we got a grand suite. Right, and our family were like, don't get an inside room. And we were like, we haven't. We've got a grand suite. And they're like, you've got a what?
See, I was scared I was going to come across like a snob.
There were 5 of them sharing a balcony.
No, 2. They had 2 balconies.
2 balconies, for 5 of them. And they came up and went, why don't we swap?
They were like, no.
Why do we not?
No.
So, yeah, our first, quite a lot of our first cruises, I think up until we went on Disney for the first time, we were saying we stayed in a suite each time because I'm like, okay, if I'm going on one, this is
this
what I
isn't
want.
me. Yeah.
And as you said, we still haven't got to the bit where we stayed on an inside cabin yet.
No.
Which, if we had, we probably could have done 3-4 times as many cruises as we have at this point. But
that's the thing.
It's quite funny because obviously we watch a lot of cruising YouTubers.
Yes, us too,
and we've always asked us, first of all, how on earth can they afford it? Because they always seem to be on a different cruise every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then it's how do they get the time off work?
Yeah.
And we find that it is a lot of people, they stay in insides, they stay they get deals or they go on 3 or 4 nighters.
Yeah.
And it is possible to have a really good value cruise where if you are the sort of person to not spend a lot of time in your room, but we spend an awful lot of time in the cabin. We love the cabin and spend a lot of time on the balcony. You know, if we weren't those sort of people and we're out doing all the activities, staying in an inside would actually be probably a better choice for someone like us. And I always say that you can just put the extra money into a drinks package and all of a sudden you're in an all-inclusive. Yeah. And you don't have to worry about any sort of like bills at the end of it. Yeah. And I think that for us, but talking about what you mentioned earlier about the formality and dressing up, I remember when Glenn, you were talking about NCL and we were talking about the Epic, one of the key reasons we chose the Epic was because it wasn't too formal, because it was a case of he didn't want to dress up. I love dressing up. You know me, I want to be the center of attention. But yeah, when we did it, that was a very key deciding factor for us. Yeah.
If I remember right, didn't Epic want that one of the first ones to do like the freedom anytime dining as well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there were none of that sittings at X and Y. It was just more relaxed.
I mean, when it comes to picking for your first time cruise, I think one of the, unless it's a celebration, and that's a different thing again, I think one of the less formal cruise lines is a way to ease yourself into it.
Yeah, unless you sort of very much sort of enjoy the formality. Yeah, if you're someone who likes going to the opera and the theatre a lot and you like putting on the tuxedos, then something like Cunard is probably a great first time one because it's going to be that very similar bit. Yeah. But the number of people that we've spoken to
who are not,
and like you guys have just said, ones like Royal Caribbean are a good gateway introduction, and NCL would be as well, to cruising. Yeah. Because there's that formality there if you want it. Mm-hmm. And they have, I mean, a lot less so nowadays on Royal Caribbean compared to what it was, but they still have formal-ish night, so you can still get dressed up and go on a date. Mm-hmm. But it is a lot different to when we first went on. Yeah. Which isn't that long ago. When was it? 2007?
That's nearly 20 years ago, darling.
I also find that the formality of some of them, take Cunard for example, is it can be very intimidating to first time cruisers if you're not used to actually that environment, or you feel that how dressy is dressy, and how smart is smart. And I think that you can get the best of both worlds with Royal Caribbean because people do dress up and they really make an effort. And
I've never felt uncomfortable in any of the cruises I've been on. I've sailed predominantly with Princess, actually, more than Royal. But even though Princess, if you had to compare them, you'd possibly say they were a little bit more formal than Royal. But I have never once dressed up for dinner on Princess, other than a short sleeve shirt and a pair of slacks or something. Never more than I've never worn a tie, and I've never ever felt out of my depth. And if I did, if it's the first formal night, for example, if read the room, if literally 80-90% of the whole ship's in tuxedos and you're not, I'll just go and sit in the buffet that night. There's other things you can do, and I would never discount a line based purely on the level of dress code or anything like that. So
no, I wouldn't now, but I did discount Cunard for a long time.
Oh, you did, yeah.
What changed your mind, actually, Mark?
Lindsay.
Yeah. We watched Paul and Carol, because Paul and Carol went on it, and they were like, "This is not what we expected. It's real. The atmosphere."
We've watched a lot of videos over years on it, and sort of earlier ones seem to reiterate my fear of it, that it's just too stuffy for me. Yeah. And that I wouldn't enjoy it. And then they say, watch Paul and Carol, watched a few other people, and all of a sudden it was like, okay, maybe we give this a go.
Yeah.
And I'm very glad we did. It is a very different environment, but Queen Mary 2 remains one of my favourite cruises that we've ever done. And it's one of the few cruise ships that I do want to do again.
Yeah.
Normally I want to, purely from creating videos and stuff, I don't want to do the same one over and over.
Yeah.
But QM2, I kind of go, I don't care. I just want to do that ship again. And in particular, a transatlantic on that
Yeah.
would be amazing. But yeah, if we take forgetting about sort of the Navigator one that you went on much earlier, if we look at the one that you both went on together as the first one, what were the things that you loved or hated about that cruise more than you expected? Hate's a very strong word, but that were much more positive than you expected, or maybe a little bit more negative?
I think for me, I had never been waited on in that kind of environment before, like people putting the napkin across your lap and things like that. I found that to be very awkward to begin with, because I just wasn't used to it. It was a very plush environment, although the haven on the Epic before they had all the muted colours after the redesign looked more like Studio 54.
There was a lot of chrome.
Honestly, it was like Vegas. It was all kinds of tacky, but in the best possible way. But one of the things I really loved was there was a lift that took you up to the haven, and only your card would get you in this lift. And at the bottom of the lift was the hot dogs. And I would come down to get hot dogs and go straight back up. And I was 50% hot dog by the end of it. But it was, I think that for me was, it was hard for me to get used to that.
Yeah.
Particularly in the Haven restaurant. It was because it wasn't formal.
No.
It was just elevated, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
it was a struggle to keep him in the restaurant. Actually, he kept wanting to go to the buffet because he felt more comfortable there. I said, "We have paid a lot of money for this. We're sitting in this restaurant."
It's so true. It's so true. And I think I said it on the video that went out the other week, was if you're in a suite.
Yeah.
And they have a suite restaurant.
Yes.
Eat in that restaurant as much as you possibly can. Like Coastal Kitchen on Anthem of the Seas is an outstanding restaurant, as is the restaurant in the Haven on Epic. I can still taste the crab cakes, eggs Benedict. It was like crab, eggs Benedict with hollandaise sauce. And I had it every single day. I know that if I ever get back on an NCL ship, which I hope I will one day, that's the first thing I'm going to eat.
Yeah. Yeah. How far did you travel to get on Epic for your first cruise? Was it did you do it on the same day? Did you go in the day before?
We have, I can tell you now, and this is my big tip for first time cruisers, never drive down to Southampton on the day you're going to embark. Or if you're flying out, don't fly in on the day. Always go the day before. If you can, go a couple of days before and enjoy the city, because you're just asking for trouble, I think.
It's so stressful. It's so stressful. I can't believe so many people do it, though. And so many cruise lines, if you buy P&O do it, Marella
do it, yeah.
Yeah, they will fly you out on the day. I'd have anxiety the whole time if we did that.
I just couldn't do it. Also, I think as well, because it's eating into your day.
Yeah.
Like we are very much, when as soon as check-in opens, well, I don't. You're the travel agent in the family, but you're straight there at 2:00 in the morning with an alarm set, so we can get the earliest check-in boarding time, so we can utilize as much of the ship as possible.
Yeah,
and I think that would also be, if you're a first-time cruiser, do that, because it's that electric atmosphere. If you're first on as well, it's a bit quieter before it starts getting quite busy, because the embarkation day is always a bit mental.
But what time do you normally wake up? Because for me, it's almost like Christmas Day when on cruise day. You don't sleep, you're checking the clock, like, is it time?
You have me set like 3 different alarms, and we're always up about 4 hours before any of them.
Yeah, it's, You can't, and I don't think any other holiday does that to you, though.
I don't know. I think anytime you're sort of excited to get away, you do that. But cruising is special for that as well.
Yeah.
I wonder if, because I've thought about that as well, because when you think about, because we do a lot of land holidays, I think so many cruise YouTubers seem to only do cruise. Maybe they just don't film their land holidays, I don't know. But we're very much kind of 50-50. In fact, I think we've got just as many land holidays booked in the next 18 months as cruises. Yeah. But one thing I think that does differentiate them is when you're on a cruise, unless you're on a kind of a European MSC itinerary, everyone's getting on at the same time.
Yes.
So you've got 3, 4, 5, 6,000 people, I don't know, however many it is, all going on holiday at the same time.
Yeah.
And all arriving there pretty much at the same time. So I wonder if that adds to the kind of the group energy. Whereas you turn up at a hotel, you're possibly the only ones checking in at that time, or, you know, a handful. And I also wonder, because we haven't done an MSC cruise as yet, if it's on one of those kind of open itineraries, open loops where you can get on and off at any stop. I wonder if it's more like a hotel holiday if you're the only people arriving that day.
It's not. If you're getting on at one of the main ports, so if you're getting on at Southampton, for instance, on Virtuosa, then that'll still be pretty much the same as normal.
Yeah.
You'll have 2,500 people getting on that day. And then the other sort of 2,000-ish that are on there will be scattered across the other destinations that you get into. But any of the main ports, MSC, still seems to be, you have that buzz on boarding day, and you have the placards up everywhere. I mean, to be fair, on MSC, every day seems to be a boarding day. And placards everywhere.
The pop-up banners and everything. It's,
that's the only downside to it. Every day there's a muster drill.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
And imagine, like, every evening you're walking around and there's suitcases It just feels a bit...
Yeah.
Well,
you don't notice.
It's different, yeah. We have got MSC booked for February next year.
Are you doing Yacht Club?
We are doing Yacht Club.
Yay!
And we're doing a back-to-back as well.
Nice.
On the MSC Seascape.
Oh,
and,
lovely.
from Miami. So it's, it's
fantastic.
to Caribbean. I can't wait. As I said, I think we said this. We actually haven't booked anything with Royal. And we have, we've got MSC, we have Explorer and Sun Princess coming up. Sun Princess in 10 weeks.
Nice.
And we watched your videos avidly when they came out. We were very, because I think we just booked. Either we just booked or we were just about to book when your videos hit. So we were, and I'm sure I messaged one, added a comment to one of them saying I was a bit disappointed with the location of a couple of the paid restaurants that were sitting in the buffet area, and I thought I'm not sure how keen I am on paying all that extra money just to sit there.
And now they've moved them.
And now
have they moved them?
We don't know where they've moved. Oh, I had heard,
So if I remember right so I think we talked about this on another podcast before, so it does mean that I researched it a bit at some point. Albeit my brain's getting old now, so I forget. One of them, I think
it's going with the Crown Grill.
Dario's.
Yes.
Butcher's Cut by Dario is going into where the Crown Grill was. So if you watch the video that we cover the Crown Grill on, you'll see what that's going to be like.
Yeah.
It's going to have a fairly major refurbishment because the Crown Grill as it was wouldn't work for Dario. You would have to change it. Albeit, I guess you could just rip out every table and put in a couple of really big long ones.
Mm-hmm.
So will that be when it next goes into dry dock, I assume?
No, apparently before that.
They're doing it now?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I mean, Sun Princess seems to have been... I know it's an inauguration season. Everybody knows it's going to have problems and there's going to be teething problems. And I think I messaged you at the time because I wanted to know, because a lot of content creators were invited on board about the terms of the contract. And the reason for that was not because I was jealous, but it was because I just wanted to know about how much control over what it was saying. Because when people say, I'm going to be honest with you, I feel like if you have to say it, it means that
I totally agree.
You're hiding something.
Yeah.
And the problem with Sun Princess was became very, very clear that it wasn't ready, even in the state it was in. And I think Princess have recognised that because they've delayed the release. Is it Star Princess? has been delayed now by a couple. Is it a couple of months? It's not even just a couple of sailings, or is it?
Back, I think, if I remember right, was it to October?
Yeah, I think so.
They were originally going to be someone's like a full season in the Med one.
Yeah,
and now I think there's just 2 cruises in the Med, if I remember right. There's the Maiden and then another one. Then it's coming round to Southampton to do the transatlantic. I think I might have got that wrong.
Well, as I said, I'm glad that I'm actually really happy about that, because I'm glad that Princess have learnt their lesson. Because you'd think that they'd know what they were doing after all these years, but like, because it impacts on the passenger experience. And I think that, again, when we mentioned earlier about finances and value, if I was going on my first cruise and I was like, I want to go on a brand new ship, so I go on Sun Princess and I'm there in the first month of it going out, and then no shows are running and half the restaurants aren't running and things aren't, and then you're going to a specialty dining restaurant and you're sat in the buffet, all of these things, and you're going, if this is what cruising is like, and I've spent 4 figures on this trip, I'm probably not going to want to go back. And I'm going to go back to my all-inclusive in Mexico or Rhodes or somewhere, as opposed to want to go back onto a cruise ship. So, because when we think about, like, what cruise line and things like that and what ship, you are playing with fire in an inaugural season, I think.
Definitely.
Because things can be not as good, not as seasoned. And we learned that on Wonder of the Seas, because we were very, very excited to go on Wonder in her first year. And it had many, many problems, particularly.
What are you talking about?
Wonder of the Sea, the Windjammer, for example.
Oh, they
couldn't cook. No, I'm joking. They could cook, just not very well. You had a biryani and they gave you beef sauce or something. That's your sauce for your biryani. It felt.
I did say the guy was from India as well. And I said, that's not biryani, mate. And he just said, it is. I said, no. You know that, and I know that. So that was a bit odd. I mean, just moving on slightly to what you're talking about there, but I think if it's your first cruise, and I was guilty of this because when I went on the Navigator, that was pretty much the newest one in the fleet, one of the largest ships in the world, and etc. And I wonder if, having done that for my first one, then I kind of felt that every cruise I went on, I had to go on something bigger and better and newer and smarter. Whereas maybe if I'd kind of started on a smaller, older ship, I could have, like you said earlier, Mark, about kind of like starting off with something you're comfortable with. I don't know if it's necessarily the best idea for your first cruise to say, right, what's the biggest, fanciest ship out there? And let's go for that. Because then if you do love it, and you start trying others, it's almost like, this is not as good as the first one, is it? And I wonder if, that's a trap that quite a few people fall into with all the marketing and, everybody I've spoken to who hasn't cruised, they might not know a lot of the ships, but they've all heard of Icon of the Seas because the marketing campaign was huge, right?
A friend of mine and his husband went on their very, very first cruise and they went on Icon.
They did, yeah.
Oh, good grief.
There was some stories about Icon that the pool was closed 4 times in the week cruise that they did, due to children not being able to hold themselves in, I guess is one of a better word. And there was a lot of issues around hygiene on that cruise.
I think it was in the adults pool. I think they've got I can't remember the name of it. They've got like the hideaway bar pool. And apparently a lot of people were writing on Facebook that there was a group of people on one of the cruises who literally went in that pool first thing in the morning and didn't leave, because as soon as you gave up your space in the pool, someone else got it. So literally people would kind of get down there and not move for hours. And of course, then there's like, well, what are they doing for the bathroom?
One of the things I was going to ask about there was about sort of best and worst cruise lines for first-time cruisers. And Icon of the Seas, I think, is like that perfect example of there's so much hype around it that non-cruisers know about it, but it's probably, I would say personally, absolutely not.
And you'll have paid double. You'll have paid double.
We were. Day one, as soon as those sailings opened, I was straight on. And I said,
we were ready to book. We were literally logging on. Like,
I have not been more excited for a cruise ship in all my life.
Yeah.
Because I think with Wonder, what they did with Wonder is they took what went really, really well with Oasis class.
Yeah.
They lifted up, because Icon class and Oasis class are not dissimilar in size. But the way they've designed it is it makes it look a lot bigger than what it really, really is.
Yeah.
And I think what they've done is they've really elevated that kind of experience. And I was ready to book. And then I saw the prices and I said to myself, I was like, we really needed to, we're going for 2 weeks on MSC in the yacht club in one of the best suites for less than what we would have paid for 1 week on Icon of the Seas in the same month. And that, I just think that, I mean, Royal Caribbean, come on, they're taking the mick. You know, something's got to change, or if people are willing, if that's just the way it's going and people are paying all that, and
the ships are sailing full every week. So
yeah, I mean, it's crazy, but it is what it is. If people have been on Icon and they loved it, then awesome. You know, I'm happy for them. I really, really am. And I say my friend and his husband, the first thing they did was message me and say, do you want to come on, what was it? Allure of the Seas in 2026.
Yeah, they went on Icon first, and their second cruise is the Allure, which hasn't been refurbished in I don't know how long. So they're like, yeah, I'll be interested to hear what their comparison is like.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you think about sort of the mega ships being not necessarily Icon, because there's a lot of big ships being that first one? One of my fears when I went on it, I don't know if it's the same for anyone else, was that I might be bored, or I might feel a bit claustrophobic. And the attraction to the bigger ones is that, you know, there's more open space. You just talked about the Oasis class, which is my favourite class of ship, because you've got things like the Central Park, and you get that sort of airflow coming through. And I think Royal Caribbean did an amazing job of how they navigate people around Oasis, and it don't feel crowded. But they are big ships, so a lot of people on them. Is a mega ship right for first timers? What do you think? I
think a ship that's easy to navigate is probably the best kind of ship for a first timer. And I would say Oasis is pretty easy to navigate. Unlike some that are higgledy-piggledy, where you have to go up, to go down, to go backwards, to go forwards. I think, and I'm going to include some Princess in that category as well.
Well, being a bit higgledy-piggledy.
Yeah, and also QM2. But in respect of I don't think they should fear one of the bigger ships, because they are easy to get your way around. It just takes you longer.
Yeah. So would you be more sort of favourable to recommending the bigger ship compared to sort of one of the older, smaller ones like a Radiance class ship on Royal?
I think it depends on the itinerary, if I'm honest.
Right.
Where do they want to go? What do they want to see? And do they want the resort feel? And and something. There's so many factors. That's the thing. You can't. I feel this podcast could go on forever. If we,
It also depends on the type of holiday you want as well. Because I always say there's a do something holiday, and then there's a do nothing holiday. So it's quite fun for us as YouTubers, and I'm using that term as loosely as I possibly can. I find that when I go on a cruise holiday, it's a do something holiday, because we're constantly making content, and my brain is going 10 to the dozen the entire time, because I'm always thinking, have we got everything we need, and all this, that, and the other, before I can then relax, and then before I know it, I'm disembarking. And then I go into a hotel holiday where I don't take a camera. And that's my do nothing holiday, and I can lay by a pool the entire day with a cocktail in my hand and not even think. And you might be the sort of person that wants to lay by a pool the whole time. Yes. So a transatlantic or something like, which has a lot of sea days, you're going to still get that experience, but it's going to be crowded. Yeah. Like being on Anthem recently, and we said this in our top tips video, which is if you want to be in the solarium, you need to be an early riser, because it gets very, very busy. But once you're in there and you've got your base and you're happy and you're sat down, doesn't feel.
But I'm not sure
hectic.
first time people actually care about that. When you look at the way that people book, say, all-inclusive holidays, majority of people choose a hotel not based on the resort or the country, it's based on the facilities that are in the hotel.
Yeah.
Because if you've got kids or, you're bringing your parents along or whatever, you want to make sure that it's got the right number of restaurants or the right play areas or how many pools it's got or how close to the beach it is. And that will typically drive how you choose an all-inclusive holiday. So when season cruises, I think so many of us talk about itineraries and, I've chosen that one because it's a very unusual itinerary, which sounds great.
Yeah.
But I think for new cruisers, I don't think they're as bothered about that. I think they would look at what facilities has this ship got? And, you mentioned Oasis class. And you can't really get a longer list of facilities than one of those ships, right?
No.
So I wonder if for first timers, that it's actually a really good bet to have a look at the facility list and say, does that tick all your boxes? If it does, don't worry where it's going. You'll be on the ship enjoying the facilities, right?
Yeah. And that's the funny thing about Utopia of the Seas, which is about to have its first year. That seems to be marketed as a 3-4 night cruise. And I'm thinking, this is an Oasis class ship. They put Ozumi in the park, by the way. that looks amazing.
Ooh.
And
where was it before?
It was. Do you remember? It was in the bowels of the ship. We even said it was in it felt like it was in the basement on Wonder of the Seas because it was all really dark. Do you not remember? You've spent ages complaining about it. Anyway, they've moved it to But the thing is, they've got this 3-4 night vacation party weekend. The way they're marketing it, and I'm like, this is a huge ship with a lot on there. 4 nights is just not even gonna. I don't think it's enough to be able to appreciate all the work that they've put into that ship. And I wouldn't want to do a back-to-back with a 3 and a 4 nighter, but
do you think that's about them trying to get more local return bookings? So people in that area coming back and doing it 2-3 times?
100%. Do you know where, is it going from is it Fort Lauderdale, Florida, or is it
Port Canaveral? The Maiden's going out of Port Canaveral. I don't know about where its home base is.
Well, then that's almost the Disney market, then, isn't it?
Yeah, which is your 3-4 night. I see what they've done there. Yeah, because Disney do the 3-4 nighters from there as well.
Yeah.
And it might be, we want to do a cruise. You can't get on a Disney ship. Oh, there's this Utopia of the Seas.
Yeah.
Actually, that might be quite clever.
If it's doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we all agree, look at the facilities, regardless of where it's going.
Yeah.
And
go with it.
yes.
Just go with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
just enjoy it.
Go with no preconceived ideas either.
No.
Because as I say, like you thought about it being too formal and realised it isn't that. I thought it was a little bit stuffy, and it turned out that was just me. It wasn't like that at all. And also everyone is so lovely. Like I have spoken
crew we're talking about.
No, I'm talking about people as well. I mean, he spends way too much time on Cruise Critic to believe the statement I just made. But,
my view on humankind has been tainted.
But I everyone I've ever spoken to on a cruise has been absolutely lovely, and everyone seems to be just open to having a conversation, particularly with like seasons cruisers and also like we met a few Pinnacles on the last cruise as well, and speaking to people who have been on.
Who are Pinnacles?
Oh, Pinnacles. For the listeners who do not know, people that have 700 Crown and Anchor points.
Wow.
You get 1 point per night on a Royal Caribbean cruise, or 2 points if you stay in a suite.
They are the biggest Royal Caribbean fans. You have to spend an awful lot of money to get.
Someone said it's about $250,000.
Wow.
You would have to spend on cruises to become Pinnacle. And but I got tier matched to Glenn on the last cruise to Diamond Plus. And he was really happy about that, weren't you, Glenn?
I earned my membership.
I married into mine.
Yeah, no.
That's the best way to get a status, man.
So I got my five free drinks every day.
Lovely.
We're one step behind that on Miles.
Yeah.
We're at Diamond.
Yeah.
Do you know how we did it? It was after COVID and they started sailing again. We didn't we had already booked a cruise, so we weren't aware of the offer at the time, but they gave 4 Crown and Anchor points per night, and we did a transatlantic.
Wow.
So we got 14 times 4, and that shot me from platinum to diamond. And then I married into Diamond Plus. And now he's like, we're saying we're not going to book on Raw for the foreseeable future.
Now you've got there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of leveled up in the game. We're over it now. We're just.
But they are now at least going back to letting your status match across the brand.
Yes,
So
and
if you do on Celebrity and what's the other one?
Silver Sea.
Silver Seas, of course. You can carry that Diamond Plus level across to.
And I am keen to try Celebrity. I'm very, very keen to try Celebrity. I think the Edge class, like Edge Beyond Apex, all look beautiful.
Yeah,
gorgeous.
And the just the aesthetic inside just feels it feels like a very calm environment. You know how, because like Carnival, for example, is very kind of loud in your face, and they're very they are really behind their marketing and the way that they design their ships. And there are people who are purists when it comes to Carnival. And then that is the complete antithesis of something like Celebrity.
Yes.
So when we talk about the type of cruise you want to go on as a first-time cruiser, if you are a party person, then don't be afraid of Carnival. But if you are someone who likes things to be calm and you've got maybe a few extra quid in your back pocket, then Celebrity could be something that you would enjoy. And in fact, that was what I recommended to my friend who took her mum on her first cruise.
Yeah.
I recommended Celebrity, and they went on the Edge.
Oh, lovely.
And loved it.
and I think it's one of those. It's such a great point, that, because one of the questions that I had in my head about today, what I thought we should be considering, I don't think it's actually a relevant question, because I don't think there is a right and a wrong answer to it, which is, which is the best cruise for a first time, best cruise line, which is the worst cruise for a first timer. And I don't think there is an answer to that. It's really down to the individual in terms of what do they want out of that cruise. And as I said, if the partnership is what you want, then Carnival, Virgin, something like that. If you want something more relaxed, or something upmarket, there is literally a cruise line.
You just have to just watch all the videos.
Just watch YouTube.
Yes.
There's everything you need.
Live vicariously on YouTube.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely the best thing I do. We watch so many cruising podcasts, cruising videos during pandemic.
We watch them all.
We can't go anywhere. We're just going to cruise via the sofa.
Yeah, but we do watch cruise videos all the time.
I would say that is the thing that we watch the most out of any media.
Yeah,
which is probably quite sad. But
we watch YouTube more than any other streaming service out there. By it's not even a close race, and we are all. And one of the things I love is finding new content creators. Because I think it's quite funny, because when we did a video about Odyssey, and we stole your idea the way, Linz, you never have seen the footage before. You see it for the first time and you get that raw reaction, and you're kind of recollecting all the stuff that happened when it was shot. Yeah. And I find that's such a unique way of creating content, because a lot of people sort of find themselves in their comfort zone and doing the same thing. And so when you watch like a lot of different content creators, you've seen the same vlog a million times and all of this and the other. And it was so refreshing to see what you guys are doing. And imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Yeah, we watched it and thoroughly enjoyed it. We were a bit sad yesterday. I was like, I wish I'd kind of thought of that. A lot of people think that we were being really creative about that, and it was predominantly being lazy. It was I don't have to do any scripts beforehand. We don't have to do any rehearsals. We don't have to be speaking much when we're on the ship, because until you did your practical ship tips, first one of them, which I think were on Iona, we never did any commentary on the ship. No. We filmed and we did everything afterwards. But it was more in terms of, well, that'll just work for us. It fits into our sort of lifestyle and work, and we can just get round to it. Yeah. But then when we watched yours back, we were like, oh, that's a nice way of doing it.
Except I think we left too long a gap between filming and doing the commentary, and I'd forgotten most of what we're doing, and I couldn't even remember being in some of those locations.
That video is only, well, we're recording this in July. That video is a month old, and we went in September last year. And that's why these videos that we're doing on Anthem are going out now, and they're going
before we forget.
We always have, we've kind of found like this thing where you have like start with the tips. So because one of the things I've learned about YouTube is it's a search engine. There are two things that YouTube is designed to. It's a search engine, the second most popular search engine after Google, and even though it's owned by Google. And also, though it's a great video platform, it's there to do one thing, which is to serve people advertising. Yes. So it's about making content that people want to watch. So YouTube can serve them more adverts, and that's how they make their money. And unless you've got premium, which is the best thing ever, honestly. And I think that for us, I mean, as YouTubers, when you get that kind of mindset, when you're looking at it, you go, okay, what are people searching for? Yeah. And what questions are we trying to answer? And that's where we started, like, and you'll notice this in Anthem, it feels we've structured everything a lot better this time round, as opposed to going out and filming everything and not really knowing and trying to cobble it all together in the end. And I found that what you're trying to do is answer a question. So that's why we have like the top tips videos and things like that. These are the tips that we've learned, and it's actually always the last thing we shoot and the first video to go out.
But I think for first timers as well, I think YouTube is one of the best kind of social media platforms, because when you look at some of the alternatives, when you look at Cruise Critique, when you look at various Facebook groups, which most sailings seem to have a specific Facebook group, what I've found in there is somebody will come on, they'll post a question, they're clearly a first-time cruiser, and they'll get a barrage of really negative kind of comments back. And, sometimes I really cringe, and I think, you know what? To you, it might sound a stupid question, because I guess you've cruised before, but why on earth do you have to belittle this person who's come on and wants some support, needs some help, needs a bit of guidance, and instead they just get trashed? And I do kind of I understand that some people are keyboard warriors or whatever they're called when they can't help themselves, but I wonder what damage they're giving, because if that new person is coming in going, this is the cruise community, they're actually not that nice. I don't think I want to go on a ship with them. They're quite mean. Whereas I think YouTube, even on the YouTube videos, which might be a bit clickbaity or might come across with an overall negative connotation, at least the format, the long video format, allows more of a balanced view than specific comments in other platforms. So I think as a new person, I would say watch YouTube, avoid some of those others,
and avoid the clickbait stuff. Oh my god! And the negativity around it. I know that negativity sells. Yes. And it's quite funny. There was the video that we did of our embarkation on Anthem. Glenn was working abroad at the time. So I'd edited the video. I'd uploaded it as a private video to YouTube, and I sent it to him to watch. And he rings me at 6:00 in the morning and says, you need to take that entire section out because you come across really arrogant. And I'm like a proper snob. But it said about never being in a standard cabin before. And it's all about kind of balance and things like that, because you want to be able to, some things aren't always brilliant on a cruise. Things do go wrong and stuff like that, but it all has to be balanced. But it also shouldn't be sugar coated because you're trying to please someone. And I think that if you can get that balance right, and what upsets me, I would say, well, not upsets me, what irritates me is what I see on a lot of YouTubers, not a lot of them, not all of them, but a few of them, when they go in on the negative and that clickbaity thumbnail and all of this. This was the worst thing ever. And then when you actually watch the video and you get through 8 or 9 minutes of them rambling about nothing to do with the actual topic, and then when they finally find out what the problem was, it was, it's something so mild that you're just like, oh my gosh, I just wasted 10 minutes of my life on this.
That's it. That's it.
Well, we've always wanted, what we've sort of created our videos to, and you said this is how you wanted to do it, which was to be a resource for people in the same way that we wanted to. We used YouTube and use YouTube now as a resource for finding answers to questions that we don't know. And it's what we want to see, but we want it to be I'm going to use the term honest there, but as you said earlier, it's just massively overused on that.
It's
You want it
balanced,
to be-
I think.
Yeah, you just want to know that the person is giving an accurate portrayal of what it is. Good or
Exactly.
bad.
And
Yeah.
let's take Sky Princess, for example. And I got a lot. This is our most downvoted video, which was the last chapter on our Sky Princess, which is our first cruise vlog series. So we were still finding our feet on how to create this kind of content. But I went on a massive rant about the app, which was horrendous.
It's not as bad now.
No, it's not as bad, but it was terrible.
I'm very.
Do you actually get what you ordered? I'd like a gin and tonic here.
I'd like a gin.
And it actually arrives.
They honestly, we were disembarking when they came running up to me with my gin and tonic from day 2. But yeah, it was, and I went on a bit of a rant, and even then it wasn't edited out. I didn't edit it down, which is something I've learned. So it felt like this barrage of almost hatred, and it wasn't. I was just really irritated by the fact that what I was sold, but not just by Princess and its marketing, but by YouTubers who had been on Sky Princess and sung its praises, called it a game changer and all of this and the other. And it was none of those things.
No.
But then these people who had been on the ship went during COVID, where there was half the people on the ship.
Yeah.
And everything was at 50% capacity. Of course, it's going to work perfectly.
Yeah.
And it just didn't for us. But we were also on a full ship, the first full ship coming out of lockdown, and lockdown number 2 or 3. I lost count at that point. And they still had COVID levels of staff.
Yes.
And so everything was, so you had half the staff for a full ship.
Yeah.
And so you could go to a bar and you'd be stood there for like 10, 15 minutes just trying to get served. But we felt they should have just turned the app off, just say it's not going to work, manage everyone's expectations and redeploy the staff that would be running around giving people drinks to the bars and try and do it that way. And I felt that it was completely mismanaged by Princess. Lots of learning from them, but everyone said that the app and the network on there is so much stronger than what it was. And so I'm excited to go on Skype on Sun Princess, but I am cautiously optimistic, shall we say.
Sun Princess, when we went on it, and I don't think it was quite at capacity, but we were like 95%. They were pretty much there because they'd sold it out. But then because of the issues, they'd persuaded some people to move and some people had cancelled. Yeah. So, but it worked close to full. And we didn't have any issues at all on there with medallion class.
But we didn't use it. We didn't, because we've been burnt before. We went to a bar. We had bar service. We didn't try and get clever with it.
No, we used it in its most basic format. On Ruby Princess, which we've just come back from, we ordered drinks and food. The drinks arrived really quick, like 5 minutes. The food never turned up.
No.
And it was on the same order.
Yeah.
And it was just marked as complete.
Yeah.
So I think what I've learned from that is you order the drinks, click complete, then you do a separate order for the food. And that will probably work.
Yeah.
But I think, it's one of those things you've got to be completely transparent about what does and doesn't work and not set those expectations.
No. I just talk as though you're talking to a friend. That's how we. What would you tell your friend? And that's how we do it. Yes.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to some news stories?
Oh, okay.
One of them fits in perfectly to what we've actually been talking about a little bit, not intentionally because I didn't know that the guys were going to mention it, but Utopia of the Seas, which they've just announced their godmother, which is Meghan Trainor. And she's going to be performing on board from.
Glenn doesn't know who Meghan Trainor is. He's sat here going,
and so she's.
Boomer.
Well, that was
I'm not a boomer.
I'm completely with you. Whilst I know who Meghan Trainor is, it seemed a strange choice for a godmother, and that's kind of what I'm interested in people's takes. And is it someone from that sort of background in terms of art and pop that you would expect to see in there?
No, I think the godmother should be a similar age to the key demographic of the people going on the ship, so they know who it is. Now,
Yeah.
That's a good shout.
Or the kind of culture that they're trying to attract to that ship. So, like Hannah Waddingham, who is the godmother for some princess.
Perfect.
Perfect choice.
Absolutely perfect.
But maybe Meghan Trainor is a pop star of some description. Or was a pop star. Maybe that's because, they say it's the biggest weekend ever. Maybe that's because they're trying to get some of that kind of party crowd. And I mean, it should have been Taylor Swift, but they probably couldn't afford her.
Can you imagine the cost on it?
No.
That'd have been interesting.
Yes.
I'm sure they would have sold out the sort of that cruise very quickly. But she's doing a concert on board on the 15th of July.
Okay.
And then it's going up to Port Canaveral. Which I sounded knowledgeable that I knew where it was sailing from, but in truth, because I read a news story about 3 hours ago, and that's still within my goldfish-like memory ability to recall it back 3 hours. Story number 2.
Okay.
This ties into something we've just done, and we heard them talk about it when we were there. The municipal clerk of Sitka in Alaska has rejected the proposals to cap cruise ship numbers, because there'd been a lot of campaigns in Alaska to restrict the number of cruise ships that's going in. And we saw it firsthand when we were there that when the cruise ships were ready to depart, those towns closed.
Yes.
Ketchikan, it was like a ghost town, wasn't it? As we were the last ones about to come out. And I'd thought, how are these cruise ships, how are these ports going to survive if the numbers really diminish? Mm-hmm. So I'm interested to sort of get people's thoughts on that, because obviously there is an environmental impact to it, and it shouldn't be done. But at the other side of it, Amsterdam, which is going to be the next port that we visit, have just agreed that they're going to cut cruise ship visits in half from 2026.
Oh, interesting.
Alaska.
Because Venice did the same.
Yes. Yeah.
Venice, and is Lisbon doing something similar as well?
I read the same very recently.
Yeah, because we just sailed out of Lisbon, and we were the only large ship in actually at the time. And do you know what the way I feel is that? So one of the things I say, so if you do a Greek Isles cruise,
yes,
and I love the Greek Isles, and you go to like Mykonos or Oia, then the best thing about it is the place where you are. The worst thing about it is the cruise ships, because when you've got like 3 or 4 in port, you've got 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 people all going to these towns that are not designed to cater for that number of people. And so your experience of being there, though it's great for the local economy, you can pick up your overpriced beads, but I do find that the actual experience of being there is not as good as it would be in your head. Yes. And
I think for non-cruisers, if you see a huge cruise ship sitting at the dock and it's spewing out whatever out of the funnels, that's not a good look, right?
No,
absolutely not. So I can totally understand why, from an environmental perspective, they're asking for this. But on the flip side, I don't imagine, local traders and etc. would be behind any bill that restricted the amount of customers that were going to come in through their door. But also, I was reading, and I don't know whether this was Miami or somewhere, where recently they've successfully done a test where cruise ships can actually plug into the land grid.
Yeah.
Instead of keeping their turbines or whatever going. And I assume, obviously there's a carbon footprint somewhere, even for grid electricity, but that must be a much better option for cruise ships that are docked.
Mm.
Yeah.
Plus the newer ships are using the natural gas thing, aren't they?
Yes,
Well,
yeah.
It's that balance, isn't it?
Yeah. Balance is the word of the show.
It is.
It is.
Balanced with Ant and Glen.
Yeah. Don't change the channel name again.
Final news story. But again, a little bit environmental as well. Did you know you got a bigger gulp than you thought?
Yes.
You drink?
Yes.
I feel like I should be on the gin as well, actually, now. I'm totally regretting having just a bottle of water.
the hurricanes that have happened, or the big
yes.
new hurricane in the Caribbean. The Caribbean is one of the sort of go-to destinations, especially for first-time cruisers. Pretty much guaranteed weather all year round, in terms of sun. But there's been a huge number of itinerary changes this week, whilst the hurricane's going on. But also quite a lot of them have changed them in advance of expectation of damage and not being able to go to the ports in the next 2, 3, 4, maybe even longer weeks. And those itineraries are in, which is obviously a concern for the same reason that we just talked about there, that a lot of these smaller ports depend on the cruise ships coming in. We saw the impact and the struggle financially on them during the pandemic, and they're only just sort of coming out the other side of that. But from a cruiser's point of view, would you risk currently going on a Caribbean cruise in the summer?
Well,
never do it. No, not a chance.
It's normally September. September is when June, July.
It's not normally too bad.
It's not normally too bad, and the pricing is still up there.
Yeah.
But September, the pricing is very reasonable, but the chances of a hurricane are very high. But now the season's obviously.
Well, they're now saying the season, I expect it this year to be somewhere from sort of now, July, through to November.
Wow.
Which, that takes a huge number. If you're saying we're not going to go to the Caribbean.
It's not just about, it's a safety reason. It's a safety thing as well. Had a comment on a video recently regarding, it was about Anthem of the Seas in 2016. They sailed in through a storm. And I wasn't aware of this. I at the time, I wasn't aware at all. And so I sort of searched Anthem of the Seas 2016 and saw what had happened, and the thought that they could navigate this storm, and it just destroyed, like deck 14. You wouldn't recognize it. Half the ceilings were coming down and everything. And I was like, oh wow, I can imagine why you wouldn't go on Royal Caribbean after seeing something like that. But I think it is a safety concern. We've talked a lot today about first-time cruisers and things like that. And if I was to say something to a first-time cruiser, it's you have to have the flexibility of change, because things can change at the last minute. A port that you may have banked on, you may not get to. On our last cruise, they literally mirrored the entire itinerary 3 days before we left. They swapped the whole thing around, which meant some ports, so we were supposed to be there late, we had to leave early, and vice versa. We had excursions moving, and you just have to go with it. And I think that with the Caribbean, having been to St. Thomas after a hurricane and to seeing the absolute devastation of what happened, it's not going to be a tropical paradise that you expect, but you just have to, as a cruiser, you just have to be willing to take the changes as and when they come and understand they're done with the best of intentions.
I would be all right traveling during the summer if I was a first-time cruiser. I think as long as, Lynn's like what you said, as long as you get a good deal. And I think if you're going after schools have kind of gone back in, but before the kind of high season in kind of November, December, I think if you can get a good deal, I would trust that the captain will, redirect the ship as is necessary, right, to avoid any of those rough seas. But also, there's a lot of Caribbean destinations which are outside of the cyclone belt as well. I think if you look at kind of Antigua or Barbados and the ABCs and stuff, they're all, I think, outside the kind of hurricane zone. So you might be able to find an itinerary which does avoid it anyway. So I would, if it was a good deal.
And as you said, the cruise lines and the captains, they never want to cancel a cruise. They will always just try.
The second that ship isn't sailing, it's losing money.
Yeah.
So they have to have that ship sailing all the time, and But I've seen a lot of things online of people complaining. And they're unhappy, rightfully so. Rightfully so. They're unhappy that their itineraries are changing, that things are changing, but they also chose to go during this season.
Yes.
It's, I understand you're trying to save a few quid. I understand what you just have to, you still get to go on an amazing cruise, And guess what? You're not going to sail through a hurricane, which is even better. So, isn't it nice that Royal Caribbean are actually flexible enough to say, do you know what, rather go this way, we're going to go this way, for your own safety and for the safety of our ship as well.
Yes.
And to be able to keep cruising. Because as I say, the minute it's not cruising, it's losing a lot of money for them. These are billion-dollar ships,
Yeah.
And even when you're paying to go high season, I mean, look at all the people that are paying to leave from the UK right now in July, and look at the weather.
Look at the weather. Yeah.
Well, you can't guarantee it any time. So I would go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were sailing back through the Bay of Bay of Biscay?
Yeah.
Yes.
The rain was going horizontal. Like it was just hot. I've never seen anything. I have seen stuff like it because I'm British, but not on the ocean.
No.
And that was in June. So
that was in June. Yeah,
you wouldn't typically kind of picture that kind of weather. That was like February weather.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we were watching on the weather map this morning, weren't we? Because there was a storm coming up through there at the moment, and you're like, I would not. This was just this morning. You're like, I would not want to be on Bay of Biscay today. But yeah, we've gone through that in sort of middle of winter. And it's been like a lake.
Crystal clear,
Yeah, so you never know.
No.
You just take it, and
Yeah.
what happens.
Yeah.
Well, always take a raincoat.
Yes.
Always. And that's the top tip of the episode. Always take a raincoat. Well, that brings us up to the end of the cruise cast. It just remains for me to say thank you to Ant and Glen for joining us.
Thank you.
thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
And we will play out with